Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Contract Warrior podcast. Today we're going to talk about communication failures before problems begin. I am your host, Christopher Williams. I am a former contracting officer. I have 17 years of contract experience from cradle to grave, and it is my pleasure to be here today to talk about this issue. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody about the free training that's available. In order for you to think like a KO or know what your KO is thinking, simply go over to thinklikeyourko.com, get that free training, and bam, you're going to know how to better communicate in writing, and that's going to make all the difference in how you proceed forward in routine execution or in mitigation. Whatever it takes, you'll know how to document it appropriately. It's my gift to you, giving back to the federal contract community. After those 17 years of being a federal contracting officer, it was the federal contractors that helped me succeed in my career. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to communication failures before problems begin. So everything really starts in pre-award. If you miss the boat, if you're not paying attention, or you don't take your time or apply due diligence, and I'm talking about both sides, right? The federal government and the contractor. If the federal government puts garbage on the street as a solicitation, then the contractor puts garbage back for award in a proposal, then what do we have? Garbage in post-award that we're trying to execute. And there are times when that is a regular occurrence, and it's simply when everybody's trying to just execute and get stuff awarded. Does that help anybody? Absolutely not. All it does is obligate money, but everything's upside down in post-award. And so it becomes a no wonder that communication starts to fail, right? So how does communication fail before problems begin? Because it usually takes that failure in communication to automatically foster problems, okay? It's never a problem that has happened and communication was great. That's rare, right? Those are usually easy to navigate because everybody's concerned or everybody's shocked that there's an unforeseen or there's an issue. But let's talk about communication failures before problems begin. And there's all kinds of different scenarios that can be ran through this, and everybody has a war story, I'm sure, about how it wasn't their fault, or maybe it was their fault, all depending, right? So it comes down to this in my experience as a contracting officer is emails versus RFIs. Okay, so you can have different dialogues, different motives, different reasonings, but in the end, the federal contractor is required to notify the KO in so many instances if anything happens, okay? So in the end, you may not like this, but the federal contractor is the one who's supposed to pop a flare and let the KO know something's wrong with the contract. And that conversation is done by what? By a formation of an RFI, especially when it's cardinal and there's a time and money impact. That makes it cardinal. An RFI should be submitted. I have never, ever, ever in 17 years had a contractor kill the office because they sent too many RFIs. And by killing the office, I mean drown them out, make them so busy that they can't get anything done. I've had contractors submit horrible RFIs that need to be rejected, of course, but never have I had a contractor submit so many RFIs that we had to tell them to stop, okay? The reality is there's usually not enough RFIs, and that means if a failure is happening and it's being handled in an email, that's the wrong answer. Emails are not the place to handle cardinal issues. So if an issue happens, right, let's say there's an unforeseen condition and the contractor emails the construction manager and says, hey, on site, we've noticed an unforeseen condition, the infamous boulder that nobody knew was underground. Right? There's a boulder there. What do we do? And instead sends an email and the construction manager emails back and everybody's emailing back and forth. Meanwhile, critical path might be getting impacted because the communication is not being navigated appropriately to be resolved quickly. So if you were to transfer that dialogue into an RFI, the RFI has much more punch to it and much more oversight and much more of an official tone to it that right there cannot be ignored or be handled as a frivolous dialogue, right? So It doesn't matter if the construction manager on the government side takes it super serious or the project manager on the contractor side takes it super serious. What matters is the context in which the concern is delivered to the contracting officer. And that is where the contractor should execute those cardinal concerns related to time and money, right? And it's outside the contract or whatever the concern is in the formation of an RFI. That is the number one reason why problems come to the surface when communication breaks down. When you look into any of these problems, you will identify that the friction began in emails and it stayed on emails. There wasn't an RFI. Or a contractor submitted something in an RFI that could have also been in an email because it was just regular execution. It wasn't anything cardinal. It was just a regular rhythm feature of work that's already on schedule and is now waiting for the government to reply when in fact the contractor didn't need to submit an RFI because it was already known. It wasn't an unforeseen or out of context of the contract. It was just a regular issue. And regardless, now they've hung up the issue. If you're able to identify the difference between communicating on an email and communicating in an RFI, then you absolutely have half the battle won. The rest is the context within those communication channels that will help you navigate and actually demonstrate to the KO that you know what you're doing. And now when the government side falls away, the KO is going to reel them in because they had no excuse to ignore or to not take action on the RFI or the email. So believe it or not, there is some engagement on the government side to ensure that everything runs along very smoothly. There's a lot of great people that work on the government team. There's a lot of great contractors out there that want to get it done as well. The problem is when you end up with a mixed bag, okay? When you have a mixed bag of staff where they don't care, they do care, whatever, you have the contract and the communication channels that need to stay intact. That's what I'm trying to convey here. That needs to stay intact. Check out that training, thinklikeyourko.com. Go there and learn how to better communicate. If you think you're the master at communication, that's great. The training is free. Check it out. You might gain something from it. If so, it was worth making. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, if you really want to let me know, hey, Chris, quit talking. We don't want to hear any more of this. We're done. Whatever feedback you want to give me, go to contractorko.com. Give me a question, give me a concern, a comment, whatever, and we may use your information on a future episode. With that said, thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you later.